So, Pyrrho, you, I think, sort of merged together your responses to Silver Soul and to me. Um, but that's okay because Silver Soul and I do share a lot of the same perspectives. This issue of the dualism, as you called it, between interior and exterior, or between mind and matter, such that mind would be something other than matter. Um, I, like you, would want to avoid any dualism here. However, I don't think we can say, for example, like what you said, that the idea of, let's say, a horse is physical because it can be located in the brain. I don't think ideas can be simply located, um, which is to say that I don't think the mind is inside the skull. Whatever mind is, I think um, it's not simply located. And so, while I'm not a dualist, I would want to say that no particular material body uh, can be said to contain the mind which we associate with it. Mind is sort of it's a communal uh, achievement, and it's just as much in the environment. Mind and intelligence are just as much in the environment as they are in the organism. Um, and so I don't think there's a dualism here, but there's a kind of polarity, and this polarity between inside and outside is such that the inside, or what you might call the a priori, is mm, somehow has its own self-subsisting reality that is in many ways not dependent upon the exterior, which also has its own self-subsisting reality, one could say. You can argue both ways, which is why there's a rich tradition in the history of Western philosophy on uh, both sides of this divide. Empiricism, materialism, and idealism, and sort of Platonic and various pulses of Neoplatonic uh, idealism, which have uh, flourished in the history of Western philosophy. Um, Both of these positions, idealism and empiricism, can be articulated to the full extent of rationality, and I think the problem is that um, each side over exaggerates. And uh, I would say, though, that metaphysics isn't something that idealists are exclusively, or that exclusively idealists are concerned with. Materialism is a metaphysics. Um, you know, Pyrrho, when you talk about, uh, us having perceptions, built into that proposition is a certain metaphysical substructure about this experiencing thing and the perceptions which it experiences. There's an underlying sort of imaginary background underneath that simple statement, which you take as basic. So, as soon as you begin to articulate why you take that statement as basic, you're doing metaphysics. Now, the word itself, implying that it's, well, Aristotle coined it, he meant just after physics. He wrote physics, uh, a text, and then he finished and wrote the metaphysics, which was, I guess, all the questions that were left over after the physics had been written. Um, I don't think you're trying to say that there are no questions left over. Uh, that would be, I mean, it seems silly to say that. There's plenty of questions left over because, of course, I think, as you would point out, physics is an ongoing uh, adventure or endeavor, and we're never going to arrive at the complete explanation or the complete description of the way the world is in itself. You're willing to do away with the idea of a thing in itself and say that it's all perceptions. Uh, so, of course, then, if it's all perceptions, we're constantly going to have questions that take us beyond the physical. We're not going to be done talking once we're satisfied with a physical description of what's going on, we're going to have more questions. And that's what metaphysics has traditionally concerned itself with, those further questions. Metaphysics doesn't necessarily imply that there's some sort of duality. And I would admit that traditionally, for example, with Plato, there's a sort of duality in the sense that there is the philosopher, seer, who knows the truth, the true world, and then there's the rabble, the masses, those chained at the base of the cave, who lack the truth and who live in illusion. I think perhaps this is just a matter of my own American upbringing, or my having been influenced by William James and John Dewey in that sense of democratic pragmatism and a valuing of common sense, so that this dichotomy between the elite knower and the average Joe Schmo, I think, needs to be reconceived. Not that there isn't some sort of a differentiation which takes place in the structure of human society, but I just don't think it's quite that dichotomous. Nor is it ever dualistic. It's always a polar relationship, not necessarily even just polar, or bivalent, but multivalent, polyvalent. So I think Pyrrho, when I would want to talk about interiority or mind as being somehow standing for itself and being evidence for itself, and not merely being evidence for something else like matter. I think what I'm trying to point to is, well, if to say it most simply, that the nature of time. To say that everything is matter is really to say that everything is the state in which the universe exists now, in some freeze frame of simultaneous existence, so that everything exists simply where it is, as it is, how it is. That is an idea, I think, that never actually happens. The universe itself is a process of becoming, and you can say it's a process of material becoming, but what does matter become if you cannot define it as that which exists at an instant? Well, this process of becoming is material, sure, but it also displays certain characteristics of value and purpose. It has a qualitative nature. There's a texture to time, and when you look at the whole cosmic span of time, it moves in certain directions, towards what traditionally in the Platonic tradition had been most generally defined as the good, the true, and the beautiful. The universe tends in those directions, tends to express itself in terms of those ideals. There's also evidence of the opposite, which is what led Plato to such a harsh division between those who know and those who don't. But I think we have the experiential capacity and the scientific knowledge and the intelligence and the imaginative vision today to not make such a harsh dichotomy between those who know and those who don't, or between truth and falsity. There really is nothing which is false. Error is sort of, to err is just to wander. And it's when we wander, when we're not afraid to be wrong, when we make mistakes, that we actually discover something new. So creativity is, in fact, just erring. So yeah, let me know if that makes any sense to you, and if we can begin to speak metaphysics